this man, he went to visit his mother who had Alzheimer's or dementia, and he sat there for hours holding her hand. And the nurse, would come in and out. Finally, one day the nurse asked him, "Why do you come here and sit here all day? She doesn't even know who you are." And he said, "That may be true, but I know who she is."
Hey, how's it going in your car? I hope you're having a good drive. I don't know if you're actually driving, but if you are, then you're like, hey, how does he know this? Because 97% of our listeners drive when they listen. I made that stat up. I don't know. This week's episode is filled with tons of laughter. I got to interview two of the biggest legends in the comedy world in observant Judaism, Country Yossi and Heshy Walfish. You probably have heard some of their music, their Kivi and Tuki, their legendary phone calls. We're going to include some of that in here so you get the feel. And more important than the work they've done, it's beautiful to see their friendship, and you'll see it throughout. I am honored to present you this episode. This episode is in memory of Shimon David ben Yaakov Shlomo. It's also in memory of Miriam Sarah Bas Yaakov Moshe. And I will tell you in the middle of this episode about a fantastic podcast. Here are the legends. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. So I want to start out of the gate. When did you two meet each other?
I didn't know this was going to be such hard questions.
This is going back decades. I mean, Heshy and I have been friends for over 50 years.
Wow.
So there are not too many groups or partnerships that can say they stay together.
What's the secret? I meant...
Well, breaking up has never entered our minds. Murder.
Many times. It's humor. Humor holds us together. It's just we find we have the same off-center of you, a sense of humor. And,
what's the root of that? Like it's not taking things too seriously, you think? Like you think when people take things too seriously, that's when like it leads to fighting and machlekes?
I just think life is too serious to not laugh. And we have always been able to make each other laugh.
And also we have complementary talents. Like I write songs, I sing the songs. Heshy plays all the musical instruments in existence. He runs a studio out of his house. He's a technician. He's the legal guy in the group. He does everything else that I don't do, which is a lot of stuff. And he does it very, very well. So it really worked out fabulously. I know a lot of people that write songs, but they never do anything with them because they don't have a Heshy. Thank God we met and we were able to produce 15 albums and...
Well, I mean, it goes back before Country Yossi. Country Yossi is only a second life for us. I mean, Yossi was the Or Chodosh, I was the Messengers Orchestra. We were literally pioneers in the music business when it was literally in its infancy. And I would say we probably met in the very early 70s. 71.
Well, the first Or Chodosh was 71 that had Bilvavi on it and Shmelki's Niggin and Eilev Arechev and All the World.
Right. So at that point in time, the Messengers had already put out 2 albums. And when the Or Chodosh came out, we very quickly became the band that performed with the Or Chodosh. So we've been together since at least 1972.
When Heshy got married, he moved into the same apartment house that I was living in with my parents. That's how I met him.
Right, that's right. So that would have been in 1970. We actually met in 1970. Mm-hmm. I remember moving into the apartment. We didn't know anybody there. Excuse me. And sure enough, we were in this apartment, and he was like right across the hall, down the hall a little bit. And we hit it off immediately.
Talk about hashkacha protis.
Yeah. And it just grew from there. So it's 52 years, almost 53 years that we know each other.
Like as you got to know each other, was there a mission of like, okay, in Klal Yisrael, they're missing X, let's go and fill it? Or it was just about having a good time together, using your talents together, and it just evolved as time went on?
Well, at that time, Shlomo Kalbach was out there with albums out. The Rabbi Sons had just put out an album. And I was roommates with Rabbi Shmelki Brazil. He's a Rosh Yeshiva today in Israel, but at that time he was in Shar Yoshev with me. Taught me how to play guitar. He wrote that, gave me a chord sheet. There's always a guitar laying around. And he had a lot of songs, those great songs that I mentioned, classics. And we said, let's put out an album too. So we borrowed money from my parents. He borrowed $1,000 from his parents. At that time, we had Josh Goldberg Orchestra. I didn't know Heshy yet. And we put out that first album. It was a tremendous hit. Everybody started singing the songs. We got calls for concerts. We started doing that.
Was that shocking? Were you anticipating that people were...
No, I mean, we were I never performed in public before. I didn't like performing in public. But for the money they were offering, I said, why not? Yeah.
I think you still don't like performing in public.
And was it clear that, okay, now we're going to put out more albums after that?
Yeah.
That happens right away.
We put out 3 Or Chodosh albums using the Messengers Orchestra. And then we stopped for a while.
Why is that?
Well, life happened. Back then Yossi was single still. And you asked if we had these big hasagas about, what we would do. No, we were having fun making music. I mean, it was really, like I said, it was the infancy of the music industry. You look at the industry today, it's evolved into something way beyond what any of us ever really imagined.
Very sophisticated today.
And back then it was, it was on a shoestring. You went in, like he said, he borrowed $2,000. $2,000 today, you start to think about
that's for lunch.
Calling somebody to say.
Well, in fairness, $2,000 then was probably.
Yeah, of course it was a lot more, but it's not even
right.
comparable.
Today they spend $60,000, $80,000 on an
right.
album.
It was somewhat affordable to figure it out then. Now it's not even.
Yeah, and it was a much simpler time. We just performed in the Jewish Music Hall of Fame concert early in February of last year.
Yeah, it seemed like everyone was there.
Right. So, but if you listen to that music, it was so much simpler and so more direct. Today, everything has got to be super produced, and it's so
It's rhythm oriented today. We were more niggin.
And you listen to those songs, and that's why those songs, when people were reacting to those songs, because those are the songs that they remember, that they grew up on. And there's a timelessness to that stuff.
Do you think the industry shifted in a way that's like losing some of that, like just that quality, because it's turned into in a certain way, like everything, but like it turns into like a financial thing, and when that happens with art, it just.
I actually think that there are people who are still writing good, meaningful songs. And I think it's starting to get away from the overproducing. I think, I've heard some recent stuff that was very much scaled back in terms of the production, and the song was allowed to shine through. For a very long time, you were hearing drums and pianos and trumpets and just musical arrangements. You weren't really, the song was just there so that they could hang an arrangement on it. I think it's starting to get back to more meaningful songs.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of your names, so Country Yossi, I assume is a stage name, unless they gave that to you by wrist. I don't know.
Country Yossi Ben Chaim. That's how they call me up.
So, what's the story there that you have a name and Heshy that you don't have a name? Is that intentional?
Yeah, well, when we started Country Yossi, it was after both of us had stopped being in the music business for quite some time. I had left the Messengers in 1978. Yossi went to Israel, and we kind of lost touch with each other. And we met up one fateful summer of Labor. I think it was Labor Day. We were
in
both
the Stevensville Hotel.
We were both at the Stevensville Hotel for a Jackie Mason show.
Oh, cool! Interesting.
And we were both big fans. And I didn't know he was there. He didn't know I was there. And as we were walking out of the show, we bump into each other. And we hadn't seen each other in many years. He had come back from Israel. I didn't even know he was back. And we just started talking, catching up, reminiscing. And he says to me, I have a drawer full of songs that I never recorded.
I started writing parodies of country music just for my own edification, for fun.
So I said, let me see him. So he's okay. We get together and he shows me. He's got Cholent, cha-cha-cha, Cholent.
Big Bad Moish, all these songs.
All these songs were sitting in his drawer just doing nothing. He says, you want to do something? Now, I hadn't done anything in music in 5 years. This was in 1983. I hadn't done anything since I left the business in 78. And I said, you know what? I've been away long enough. I detoxed from the business because the Messengers were a very successful wedding band. But that's a very, very stressful business. And I had had enough. and I was in the real world. And I said, okay, let's do it. So we decided, we went into a studio, just the two of us, and created the first Country Yossi album. Where did the name come from?
Well, those country music parodies. So, there was Country Joe and the Fish was out there. So let's do a Country Yossi, do a parody of his name, Country Yossi, and the Shteeble Hoppers. So the name stuck. I ended up doing a radio show up in the country, so people started assuming that the country had to do with the show broadcasting out of Liberty, New York. And the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. So, and then I guess, like, you didn't have a cowboy hat before then. You just, I guess...
No, I for the first album, I borrowed somebody's big cowboy hat, put it on, and that became the logo. Mm-hmm. And here it is, turned black over the years.
Very interesting. So I'm going a little out of order, but when each of you were children, I mean, you mentioned Jackie Mason. Was he one of your inspirations for what you do?
No, he just, we developed our sense of humor based on his style, I think. And
who else? Are there others, whether comedians or Jewish singers? I don't know. Who were you listening to when you didn't have Kivi and Tuki till whichever?
There wasn't any of that.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like who did you look at and say?
Well, the Rabbi Sons were a big influence.
The Rabbi Sons were a big influence. Shlomo Karbach was he was just starting out then. I remember when I was a kid, him coming. I grew up in Muncie, and he came out to do a concert, and I remember my father taking me to see him, and that made a big impression on me.
A lot of Jewish music celebrities have told me that they were influenced by us. They came to the Pioneer Hotel when we had a concert, and they were enthralled. Shia Mendelowitz and Yossi Green, they all told us, you influenced us to come into the Jewish music business.
Wow, it's like a cycle.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So let's talk about some of the content that you've put out. Okay, I mentioned before Kivi and Tuki. Like, where in the world did you guys pull that out?
So Yossi was very kind to say about all the things that I do. Yossi is, and I say this, miktsas shvacha b'fanav, but I say it with complete...
No, you can go ahead.
Yeah, come on.
I'm Michael covered.
Yossi is one of the most creative people I've ever met. He just has such a creative mind, and he's always coming up with original and interesting ideas. I remember writing on one of the album covers that Yossi has dragged me into more areas of artistic accomplishment that I ever would have gotten to on my own. He dragged me into graphic design, into production, music production, into arranging, and things that I wouldn't have necessarily done. But he has an idea, and he just lets you run with it, and he just makes everything better by doing that. So yeah, it's his weird imagination.
Well, we decided to put out a children's line of songs besides the Country Yossi stuff. Something for kids. So we came up with Kivi and Tuki. I saw the word Tuki in a Hebrew-English dictionary that my kid had, and I'm looking through it. I'm reading it to her, and all of a sudden I see a picture of a parrot, and it says Tuki. I said, that's a cute name, Tuki. Reminds me of Tuco and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So then I came up with Kivi because I heard somebody shouting to the neighbor, Kivi, come home for supper. I said, that's it, Kivi and Tuki. So we wrote a whole script. She's a concert pianist. And we started putting out children's albums. And now we have 6 out there already.
We have 6 that are done, and we're working on a 7th now.
So we
really are? Oh,
we're keeping busy. We're still creating stuff. We don't work as fast as we used to. We used to be up till 3 o'clock in the morning in this recording studio. Now 11 o'clock, Heshy says he's tired, he has to go to sleep. So it's taken us 5 years to do this album, but eventually it'll come out.
Well, what's the creative process like? Is it like, do you just take care of it all and then you say, okay, now I need music? Do you go back and forth on it?
You know, I'll play him a song that I wrote, and he'll make suggestions and edit the lyrics and help me, you know, phrase things, and it's really a collaborative effort.
Yeah, it's really totally collaborative at this point. We kind of have one brain at this point, and he'll come up with a song like for this album. He calls me up. He says, I have 2 songs I want you to hear, and he records it like onto your phone, and he sends me the song, and I can hear instantly what that song is going to sound like, and that's how this album started. And what we do is we write songs. We have a general theme that we want to follow in an album, like
make money.
No, I'm talking about a creative theme.
That's what you mean.
But and then we'll write the songs, and then we create a storyline that ties all those songs together. And in Kivi and Tuki's example, it kind of always follows the format of a day in the life. Mm. And we start off and they get up in the morning and what happens during the day and how the songs fit into that day, and then comes the night, and that's an album.
Is there like an agenda and then you work backwards based on the agenda, or does it start with one idea and then it just transforms into 2 and then 3 and then 4? And then 5?
Well, it starts with a couple of songs that I play for him. He gets excited.
Where do those couple of songs come from?
I sit down with the keyboard and suddenly I get inspired, or I get a hook, and
I think it starts with an idea. I mean, if you want, like, we have a song on this album, Shabbos Kodesh. That must have, I never asked you about this, but I assume that you had that idea when you started writing the song.
I haven't had an original idea in years.
Yeah.
No. I don't know. The process is...
It's mysterious.
It's a gift from God.
Mysterious.
You know,
it really is.
It could be late at night and I could be just fiddling around with chords, with rhythms, and all of a sudden something interesting happens and I come up with the words just come to me, and then the song writes itself, basically.
Do you ever have an idea that like you get like 5 minutes into Shabbos and you're like, okay, now it's like, I don't want to forget it.
Yeah. If I come
up, going the whole Shabbos, like 25 hours.
Yeah,
now,
I've been singing the song to myself all Shabbos.
Yeah, I did that once.
Yeah. I think a lot of songwriters have that problem.
Right, I can imagine.
But now with the phones, if it's not Shabbos, I can immediately do a voice recording. Yeah. Or else it's gone. Once it's gone, forget about it.
Yeah, if it's gone, you'll never get it back.
You've been around for so long that you've been there for the quick advancements in technology. It probably makes the whole process. You said the phone as an example, but even we're using mics. I don't know. These are like, your mics are better, but like they're $400 mics, and like the pros use those mics. Like that's super. I'm sure back then, buying your recording equipment, just the price alone was very different and clunky. And
I was just telling Yossi the other day, we're working now on animating some of the Kivi and Tuki stuff into videos.
Nice.
So we're working on the 4th album now, and I haven't, we don't listen to our own stuff all the time. I haven't heard that album in a very long time, and the animator sends us something to look at, and now I'm listening to the album, which I haven't heard in a long time, and I'm saying to myself, and I said to him just the other day, I said, do you remember how we recorded this? This was recorded in my house, in one room in my house, and it was recorded off of a single keyboard onto a 4-track cassette tape recorder. And I literally put down 4 tracks of music onto this cassette off of this one machine, and then I took that tape and went to the studio. We recorded it from the cassette tape onto the multi-track tape, and then we recorded the voices in the studio. But that whole album was done literally onto a 4-track cassette tape. We've gone a long way since then. Now everything is done digitally. It's all computer.
It's so much easier in a way.
It's much easier. Oh my God, it's much easier. It's still a lot of work.
Right.
But it's much easier.
Wow. Okay, so I want to get into My particular, I mean, there's so many things that you guys have done that are like just, affected my childhood and affected most people's listening childhood. But I don't know how to label it, meaning I forgot the exact terminology. I just remember the fact of it being hilarious. Those phone calls that you
classic calls.
Classic calls. Like,
that's the radio show. Yeah, that's a whole different.
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
His qualifying question is as follows: how many feet in the yard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many feet in the yard?
Yeah.
Oh.
Depends how many people are standing in the yard. I don't know.
Hold on.
Where are you going?
I have to ask my sister. How many feet are there in the yard?
Yeah,
How many feet are there in the yard?
Planet Borough Park. How many feet are there? 16. How many? 8. How many?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Oh, they're
please.
going to convene a
A
conference.
mathematical convocation.
Get the calculator.
Let's measure the yard.
Where's the calculator? Let's go out to the yard. Trying to determine how many feet are in her yard.
It's so hard.
I know, it's a very hard question. What grade are you in?
Me?
Yeah.
In 10th.
She's in 10th grade. Never learned how many feet are there in a year. How many inches in a foot?
12.
Ah.
So how many feet in the yard?
Yeah.
Woman, yes.
No, call somebody on the other phone. Call the
4.
4 feet in a yard.
Yeah?
No. You want to call the bells are dying while we wait? Call on the other line. I'll wait.
No, I say 4.
You're wrong. Ring the rooster. She's wrong.
Oh.
I'm giving you a chance to call somebody on the other line if you want to call somebody quickly. You can one phone call.
Yeah, and then you still listen?
Yeah, but I have to listen in while you make the call.
Okay.
Who are you going to call? Your math
How many
teacher?
feet are there in the yard?
Call Gitti on the other line, quick. Gitti got a 65 in math. Call her up.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm calling.
Okay. It's probably going to be on Regents this year.
This is on the calculus regions.
Who are you calling there?
My mother.
Oh, that should... come on. She knows. Yeah, there should be no problem. Call her mother. Is your mother home?
Hold on, my mother's coming to the phone.
Okay, I want to hear the phone conversation, however. Calling her mother to determine how many feet there are in a yard.
Mommy? Good morning. I'm on the phone with Country Yossi. He gave me a chance to call you. How many feet are there in the yard? 3.
3! She's absolutely right!
Okay, Mommy. Thank you. Because I need the question. I have to answer the question.
Good thing.
Okay. I know. Okay, thank you. Bye. Hello?
Yeah, this phone call goes right into the Hall of Fame. There's no question about that. This is a classic of all time. I got a feeling she'll be calling back her mother in a couple of minutes.
Maybe.
You shouldn't have hung up.
With your episode, I felt like in a certain way I don't need to do research, but then again, all my knowledge is coming from my 10-year-old self. So it's like I don't know what started when actually. And so yeah, the classic calls.
Yeah, so besides the CDs that we put out, I put out a magazine
Okay.
for 38 years,
Wow.
headquartered in Borough Park. And
The Country Yossi magazine.
yes.
Okay.
And
What was it? It was weekly. It was monthly.
that was monthly, basically. And then that evolved into a radio show. Actually, it was the other way around.
Really?
I started with the radio show. Larry Gordon, who's from the Five Towns here, now he's the editor of the Five Towns Jewish Times. He had a radio show before Nachum Siegel did, actually. He started that whole Uppsala College thing. Anyway, he interviewed me once, and it was interesting. And then he asked me if I wanted to sit in for him once when he was gone. I never had done it. I said, I'll try it, And I was very laid back. And as I got into it, I started getting more and more comfortable until I started screaming, Gewaldig! I started, you're a winner! And I started ringing the bell, and people started calling, and I started giving away pizza pies. And it turned into a whole tremendous thing that I was on the air for 38 years also. And from that came the magazine, and then came the children's. We put out a board game, and then we put out books, and then we put out what else?
Well, he did the radio show. He started the radio show by himself. I wasn't involved in that in the beginning. I wasn't involved in the magazine either in the beginning. I was strictly the music. Mm-hmm. But then, as I said before, he schlepped me into a lot of different things. And in 1997, in March of 1997, we started doing the radio show together in the morning. We did a morning show. And I like to say that we were on the air in the morning for 15 months. And those were the hardest 15 months of my life because we were on the air at 9 o'clock in the morning, which means we had to get there well before.
Was that in New Jersey?
And it started in New Jersey. We were in Newark. So we were driving to Newark every day from Brooklyn and me from Long Island. So I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to this place.
Oh, wow. And there's a pressure. It's live. You
can't be late.
Right.
So like the morning we got into the accident on the way there.
What was that like?
Yeah, that was fun. But I said right away, I said, Yossi, we can't do this. I can't be schlepping to Newark. So we built a radio studio in his office in Borough Park. And we did that show. And that's where those classic calls came from.
Yeah, so people called in, and we started taping all the
We
calls.
taped all the
and
shows.
The ones that were really interesting, we flagged. And then at one point we said, let's put out a CD. So we did that with the classic calls, and people are still quoting it today. The 5 boroughs of New York.
Yeah. Did you ever meet any of these people that did the calls?
No.
The 5 boroughs for Ganendel or I don't know.
Ganendel
So
from
it's the
Borough
fake
Park,
name.
right?
So okay, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that you did so many calls and then you picked the best of the best.
Sure.
Oh, sure. We've been kicking around the idea because I have hundreds of hours of stuff on tape
Really?
and going through and finding some new calls to make and make another CD.
I would love if you guys did that. I mean, are you still in the realm of like putting out a CD, or like would you make it into a podcast or a YouTube channel or?
It's an interesting question. We've been thinking about it. We just recently put all the music up online. We did not have any online presence other than the website we had, but we used it to sell CDs. The CD is starting to disappear.
Right.
So, people are putting out music now on USB drives. And
But even USB drives are kind of like going out, like people are just putting directly on Spotify or YouTube.
Yeah, so that's what we did. We ended up putting the music up on all the online platforms.
Right.
And now there are so many Jewish platforms, 24/6.
Yeah.
Jewish Music FM and Naki Radio, and yes, we're on all those platforms now.
Right.
So the music is all there, and we've been in discussions about doing podcasts and expanding the content of the online presence.
Is there a trick or a key to like making a successful phone call like funny? Is there like what's the ingredients to make it good?
You want to know the ingredients?
Yeah.
He's sitting right there.
Really? There's got to be a method. I'm not saying anyone could do it.
Well, first of all, most of the calls came from Borough Park and Flatbush, which are inhabited by characters, and it doesn't take much to get them going, and then to say funny
I don't know,
things.
both of your energy, like on it, it was so easy to listen to. It was so good, so sharp, so quick. Like,
yes, well, that's what I said in the beginning. We really have a symbiotic relationship here. He can say something, and I will immediately pick it up and go. And no matter what direction either of us shifts to, the other one is right there alongside. And Yossi has a tremendous knack of getting people to talk and getting people to say things I don't think they really wanted to say in the beginning. But
and Heshy has a very infectious laughter, so if I said something funny, he started cracking up, and it just makes everybody crack up along with him.
Right. Was there inspiration for that? Like, what? I don't even know at that point. Were there other like? I don't even know exactly maybe it's your own style. I don't know if there was anything else there was phone call-ins to radio shows, but like not in really that style, I guess. No. Like they have crank calls, but that's not the same thing, really.
Yeah.
No. You weren't pranking anyone.
No,
we wouldn't do that.
You're having fun with someone, and no one knows who it is.
Right. It was just fun, and it was exciting because people could win prizes. So that always adds to the excitement. That's why people call. They wanted to get that prize.
I offered junk from my trunk,
right,
and all this kind of stuff, and people lapped it up.
Yeah, the outbound lane of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel.
I gave away a lot of stuff.
Well, what's the biggest or best thing that you gave away, or most interesting thing you gave away?
Oh gosh,
throughout the years.
Most interesting, besides junk in my trunk.
Well, you could say one of the junks in your trunk.
No, I mean, those were obviously gags. We did give away real prizes. We gave away CDs. We gave away some pizza shops would
2 slices and a soda.
2 slices and a soda would give us the ability to do that, and they'd come in and say they won on Country Yossi. And
All the sponsors offered prizes from their stores.
Did you ever get like, I find like a certain struggle of mine, at least when it comes to like an observant life, is we have a system that it's set up that it's like so regimented and like in a box, and there's a certain pattern, there's a certain path that you follow. Did you ever get like backlash from Rabbanim or just people are like, what are you doing?
Well, when we first started, the rabbis called us that we shouldn't have men. And I used to have 2 people in a contest against each other. I had Moshe from Brooklyn and Yentl from Williamsburg, and whoever answered the question first got a point. 3 points, you got the 2 slices.
Mm-hmm.
The rabbis called and said, you can't have men against women. It's sneas. So I made 8 to 9 was men, 9 to 10 was women, and the kids were 6 to 7. I had to separate the sexes. And we got calls from the phone company that were being bombarded by calls. We were blowing out the lines. We got 18,000 calls coming into the show in 1 hour. So we had to separate them, and I had to separate it by places too, like only calls from Flatbush now, only calls from Borough Park, or else the whole city was calling in. So that was interesting.
So in terms of that, you had that, but like as time went on, were there other times where people are like, what? Meaning like right now, you look back, it's like, it's so obvious, it's so helpful, it's so needed, like what you were doing, but I'm sure there's points where people like they didn't even understand what you were really doing. They probably didn't even listen, and they're already like giving you like not necessarily Rabbanim, but like
there were a lot of Hasidim that didn't have radios when I did the radio show. Mm-hmm. A lot of Williamsburg people didn't have radios. They used to call me. I said, "How are you listening to the show?" He said, "I'm in the car." A lot of them went out to the car for a couple of hours at night to listen to the show and to call in because they didn't have radios in the house. But we didn't have too much of a problem.
No, I mean, in the beginning, there was a little bit of putting Jewish themes to English music. That was because that hadn't been done really before. I mean, it had been done, but not in the Frum community. And I think we got a little bit of pushback on that kind of stuff, turning English songs into Jewish songs.
Like 7 little kids sitting in the back seat, you know. Some of the people knew the original songs and they were a little taken aback, but eventually that went away.
Right. I mean, you always have the argument of like taking the Toma and making it into Kedusha.
Well,
you know?
that's exactly what we said.
Malam b'kodesh.
Yes. Ein Maridin.
So there's a question for each of you. Is there a favorite song that you put out? I know it's like asking you your favorite kid. But is there one?
I like the serious songs.
Really?
Yeah, the funny ones is great, and people love those. But I like the Musa songs, I call them, you know. TikTok, The Wedding's Over, It's Only Make Believe. Those type of songs appeal to me.
The Deaf Man and the Shteeble is probably one of the most famous songs. Didn't hurt that, what's his name, Leif Tahor redid it also.
Right.
But that was a classic song. I like a lot of the funny songs because I just like funny songs. To pick one, I mean, one time I did a count. What did we have? 160 songs or something that we've done. I don't know. I liked My Little Yingala. I liked the Big Knocker. That was a funny song.
The best answer I heard when the people were asked this question is the next song.
The next CD. Yeah. Is the character Moshe Shmuel based on anyone or based on a few people?
It's a composite, I think.
There was a guy I knew named Moshe Shmuel.
Oh, there really was?
Yeah, he was a guy, but he was a nice guy, Hasidic guy. But the name fit into the song. And
a lot of the names we use are just standard names.
Did Moshe Shmuel, Hasidic Moshe Shmuel, did you ever tell him, like, hey, by the way, your name
Nah, he never heard it. He's a very firm guy.
Oh, he didn't hear it. But maybe he'll hear it one day. He'll be like, what? Look how much is behind it.
I assure you, he's not the only Moshe Shmuel in the world. It's not an uncommon name.
But I davened in a Shteeble. It was called Beis Moshe Shmuel. When I saw it, I said, "Oh my!"
Wow. And for you too, was there ever a point where because I consider you're still doing it even though there's a break. Was there ever a point later on as you got back into the flow that you're like, okay, we just can't put out any stuff anymore, like this is too much, let's go back to...
No, it's just, we if we didn't have the time, we just let it ride for however long it took. But once we always knew we wanted to do it as soon as we had the opportunity. And lately we've been having the opportunity and we've been working on stuff.
Was this, like, I don't even know, like, as we're talking, like, was this a hobby? Were you doing this full-time at
It
points?
started out as a hobby, but with the public acceptance and with the demand for concerts and demand for more CDs and for more albums and for more radio shows and for more magazines, it started developing a whole life of its own and it started becoming lucrative.
We'll be right back to this week's episode, but first I have to tell you about something that is groundbreaking. Everyone likes a good podcast. They're looking for one common factor. They want to learn something new that will help them live a better life. Seems obvious, right? Sometimes they're looking for something small, like an entertaining, funny show. Sometimes they're looking to drastically improve their life. The JOMA podcast is that, a way to learn about the crucial topics and ideas in the world of health to help you navigate a better and healthier way to live. The Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association shares preventative health information geared to members of the Orthodox Jewish community. Their wonderful and engaging host, board-certified pediatrician Dr. Lisa Minkin, each episode delves into various topics and challenges that so many people have or could have, and there's more. Listening is one thing. You can also call the JOMA hotline 929-4GESUNT. That's GEZUNT. All your smartphones has the letters over there if you don't have access to the internet. There's no reason in 2022 that you need to be in the dark. And some of the most talented doctors and healthcare professionals in our community are here to help. So go listen to the JOMA podcast wherever you listen to your podcast and call their hotline 24/6 at 929-4GESUNT. Folks, go ahead and check out the JOMA podcast. It's very insightful. This podcast that you're listening to or watching, I think is great. And I highly recommend my podcasts. My mother recommends it. My father, I have a lot of people recommending it, but there's something very special about the JOMA podcast about how professional it is and informative it is and important. I think listening to Inspiration for the Nation is good. It's great. It's not necessarily something you need to do. It's like when you're kicking back, relaxing, and you want to be inspired. That's what I'm here for. But if you want to navigate a healthier life, that's what the JOMA podcast. And you could go through the range of episodes that they have. The topics are vast and various, and you could go ahead and choose something that you're like, hey, this actually pertains to me. Or I know someone in my life going through this medical crisis, or they have these questions. My wife always asks me about this. Boom. You could go ahead and hear leading experts in the field talk about it and educate yourself to live a healthier life. Now back to my conversation with Country Yossi and Heshy Walfish. What advice would you give to each of yourselves if you could go back like 30 years?
Don't give up the day job. It wasn't that lucrative. It's funny, Heshy worked out of this office where we're sitting right now.
He said that before.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yes, Yossi really took this and made it his work. I always had other things that I was doing, but I will say that there's a certain element of youth that's involved also. When we started this, I mean, I was in my 30s, I guess. How old was I?
First Or Chodosh,
I was 40. I was around 40 when we first started. No, in 80 when we started Country Yossi,
Yeah.
which was in 83. So I was in my 30s. So we used to go to work. Both of us had day jobs. He was working on 47th Street. I had my own company, and I remember coming home, grabbing something quickly to eat, and running to the studio and sitting in the studio till 2:00 in the morning, and when you're burning the candle at both ends like that, at some point you reach the middle and you're gone.
You end up looking like this.
Yeah, you guys look pretty good.
So I would say from 1983, that first album, through 1987, we put out 4 Country Yossi albums and 3 Kivi and Tuki albums. So in a 4-year span, we put out 7 albums.
Wow.
And that's running to a studio 3 nights a week till 2:00 in the morning. And remember, in the beginning, I was playing all the music on the. Eventually, when we started to get more and more into it, so we started to have other musicians come in and help out. But yeah, this was a very labor-intensive undertaking, and you do burn out. Comes a point where you almost can't do it. So yeah, we put out that tremendous output, and then it started to slow down. It would be a couple of years would go by before another thing would come out.
Did you feel lucky to be able to do and still do what you do? Like, you have so many people that are like, they go to school, they're not sure what they want to do, then they go to graduate school, and now they're in an office 9 to 5, and they're like, this is, I guess, my life now. You guys are, it sounds like very hard work, but you're in the studio until 2 a.m. Sounds like having a lot of fun, working hard, but
Yes.
Very rewarding is what it is.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, I always said we should have, if I were to give myself a piece of advice now, I'd say have somebody videoing the sessions.
interesting.
Because especially the Kivi and Tuki sessions, because I mean, I do the voices, and it's done through a certain machine, and I would do those live. So when that machine turned on, I literally became Tuki. I adapted that mindset of Tuki, that wise guy, and I mean, I would ad-lib stuff all the time, and some of the stuff didn't make it onto the albums, but it was very funny. So we used to have a very good time doing these albums.
Are there, like you said with the calls, is there archives of like Kivi and Tuki that never really aired?
Outtakes?
No. That's why I said I would have liked to have had that.
We had to burn them.
No, could ever find it.
No, we didn't keep any of that stuff.
Wow. What advice would you give to let's say a younger person who's like seeing you or has heard your stuff, and they're like, I don't know if they want to do particularly music or albums and that genre, but they want to do something creative. What advice would you give them?
Well, these days everything is very expensive. If they want to, record an album, it's almost prohibitive, unless they're making a career out of singing at weddings and trying to use it as a business card. To produce a CD today is very expensive. Any other field of endeavor, I think they should stick to their professions.
Well, no, on the other hand, yes, it's very expensive, but I think that's changing now also, because the technology has gotten so refined and so competent. I was just the other day, I was at my great niece's bat mitzvah. And I went home afterwards to the family when I hadn't seen them in a while. And my great nephew takes me into his bedroom there, and he has a recording station. What does it consist of? It consists of a microphone stand with a little enclosure to deaden the sound. And he's got a small Focusrite interface, and he's got GarageBand on his phone. And he's recording music. And I got to tell you, I mean, he played me some of the stuff. He's just doing simple guitar and vocal, but you wouldn't know that he didn't do this in a studio, and he's doing this in his bedroom. So is he going to release commercial? No, but I think that more people, I would say my impression is that there's far, far more musical talent around today than when I was starting. When I was starting, you could count the number of young musicians on 2 hands. Today, I'm astonished when I see people, these young kids who are into music and playing well. I can't explain it. It's like an explosion of talent.
Do you each of you get spotted on the streets? I'm sure in this getup that you're wearing now. For those listening, they're wearing cowboy hats and the whole getup. But do you? Maybe Country Yossi, you get more. Heshy less.
Yeah. Yossi I get stopped. I was in Israel a couple of years ago. I stopped somebody on the street and I asked him, where's that kosher McDonald's? It was in Ben Yehuda. He said, are you Country Yossi? Just from my voice.
Wow.
You have a very distinctive voice, and it's been on dozens of albums. And
But we came into Meir Sharim. It was a 3-story building. There were kids looking out the window, yeshiva boys. One guy looks, that's Country Yossi. All of a sudden, the whole yeshiva emptied out. They all came out into the street, surrounded me. They were, autographs and taking pictures with me. And the Rebbe comes to the window. Come back here, Kim Tzedek. Yes, I get recognized in the street. I'm surprised because, as a radio personality, it's not like people know my face. But I don't look like my logo anymore.
You do, yeah, you still do.
The big hat, they love the big black hat. Oh my gosh, in Borough Park. Vida Hittel.
It's hats in Judaism is common, but cowboy hats isn't really.
They don't know the difference.
They don't.
They think this is the new style of Shteeble.
Right. That's very interesting. So I ask all my guests if there's one person from history they could sit down with for an hour, who would it be?
You.
You would sit down with me. Oh my! It's the first time someone ever answered that. I feel so bad. I'm sorry. I'll let you down a lot.
One guy from history.
Or girl.
I think David HaMelech is somebody that he played music, played the harp, he wrote piyutim, he wrote poetry, he wrote the Hillim. I think that's somebody I'd like to get to know a little bit better, see what inspires him.
Wow, that's a hard question.
Or Esther Malka, I want to see if she's really green,
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I never even thought about it. It's the...
Look it back to you on that.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a hard. I don't know. Someone flipped it back on me once. I'm like,
What's the most interesting answer you ever got?
I don't remember interesting, but the nicest answer I've ever gotten, and it's a long story, but it was basically cut out of the episode and whatever. But the nicest one I got, and funniest, so it was Jake Turks. Are you familiar with Jake Turks?
Yeah, sure.
He's great. Turned into a good friend of mine after that interview. But he started off with he would want to meet Adolf Hitler, and he said he would tell Hitler, he would go to him when he was like a child and say, Hitler, you're gonna be like have the biggest impact in the world because your art is gonna everyone's gonna be obsessed with your art. Continue on your dream to become like an artist. And
give up the politics.
I wasn't even into that yet when he's a young kid.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. That was a creative side. And then he's like, could I give a serious answer? And I said, yeah. And he said he had a child that passed away, a son that passed away. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but died, a day after he was born. So he said, for an hour, I would just want to hold my baby's hand. And I've gotten so many really interesting, great answers, but there's something about that answer that I'm like, that's, I think, the perfect, beautiful, nice answer.
It's very touching.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So how did you get started in this business? Let's turn the tables on.
Oh, yeah, I could be like on your show. Yeah, I used to do a podcast called Meaningful People, and Baruch Hashem, things evolved, and I'm doing Living Lchaim now. We have a bunch of shows on this network. And yeah, well, once you're turning the tables, what was your process when you were having people call in? It was it was a game show always? Was it conversations also? What was it?
Well, it depends. If it was ever Pesach, we took Pesach questions. How do you kasher your braces?
Everybody wanted to know how do you kasher your braces. We used to say blowtorch. Use a blowtorch.
Stick your head in the microwave and turn it up to the highest.
We had very creative answers to that question. No, we did. We interviewed politicians on the show. And
we had Dov Hiken on. We had
serious segments, and then we had the call-ins where people. It was always a game show, and the call-ins were always a game show. You had to answer the questions in order to get the prize.
Well, then, but let's say with Dov Hiken or the serious ones, and I don't remember listening to that one. You guys have a lot of content, so forgive me, I didn't hear everything. But during that serious conversation, you're both very fun. You didn't. Did you have the urge to crack a joke?
We always did.
You always did.
You always did.
You always threw in your personalities throughout.
Yes.
Yeah, the calls were the highlight of the show. Everybody wanted to win free prizes. The key word was free. If they're getting something for free, they went crazy, you know.
What do your children think about like all of this?
I have 4 daughters, married daughters. Baruch Hashem, they grew up, loving the celebrity, loving people stop them. Your father was so funny last night. So only good things.
Okay, good.
Yes, my kids were more about the music, because I would come home, and the next, I'd come home at 3 a.m. or whatever, and the next day they would all get together and we would listen to what we did the night before, because we would take home reference cassettes of what we did. And they would listen to the songs, and so they knew every note and every word, and they loved the music. They just loved it.
Is there anything that you would want, like if there's one thing that people could remember from all the work that you've done, is there one particular piece of work that you're like, go listen and watch everything, but this particularly I'm proud of?
Well, there's a lot of different things, but something that moved me recently was I met Mordechai Rubashkin, Shalom Rubashkin.
Yeah.
And I introduced myself. I said, I'm Country Yossi. He said, you helped lighten my load.
Really?
I thought that was really something. Because a lot of people said the fact that we're making Klal Yisrael laugh and making them smile and just giving them a little relief from this heavy gullus that we're going through. They always told me, you're going to get into Gan Eden from what you do with all these light episodes.
Yeah, no, I think that people react and enjoy.
They appreciate it.
Yeah. Look, everybody likes to laugh. It's a human condition. Everybody, no matter how serious you are, no matter what's going on in your day, if something happens that can, suddenly it turns your perspective, and now you have something that you can laugh at. I think that's the best. Laughter is the best medicine. It's a trite saying, but it's 100% true.
Right.
You can make somebody laugh, you can lighten their day.
How, we're unfortunately like so removed from that time period, but there was, when you started off, there was so many Holocaust survivors, which it was, from their background and from their experience, very difficult. And then all of a sudden you're coming in with laughter and humor. Did they appreciate that more, or they didn't connect to it as much?
It's bad.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. They like to laugh even more than other people. They went through enough in their lives where they were looking for a little laughter. I went once, very interesting episode. I went into a jewelry store to collect some money he owed me for advertising. I walked in, he started waving his hand and shaking his head. Nicht eint. I said, oh, you had a bad day? He says, he stopped what he was doing, stared at me. He says, I haven't had a bad day since I was liberated from Auschwitz.
Wow. You
don't know what a bad day is. Every day is good. Some days are better than others, but every day is good. I walked out of there
Big Musa Hospital
without money, but richer in many other ways.
Wow. That's very powerful. Is there a specific story or moment that either happened in your careers or that you've heard that has inspired you?
No.
If there is, I can't think of it right off the top of my head.
Yeah, sorry. This is the type of question I usually feed to people before. I don't always ask it, but
I don't know. Like I said, I was inspired by Shlomo Carlebach. The rabbi's sons were very inspired.
No, but I'm saying a story. There's
a story.
Yeah, is there a story that like?
Oh, a story.
It could be that it either happened in your life or it could be that you've heard it.
Well, there's one story that moved me. This man, he went to visit his mother who had Alzheimer's or dementia, and he sat there for hours holding her hand. And the nurse, would come in and out. Finally, one day, the nurse asked him, why do you come here and sit here all day? She doesn't even know who you are. And he said, that may be true, but I know who she is. Mm. That really wow. That was a very inspiring story.
I would not point to any one thing. There are several things over the course of a life that stand out and have impact on you. I personally lost my parents when I was very young. So and when you told that story about the one, his kid,
Right.
So I thought back to if I could spend more time with my mother, that would be a big deal to me.
How old were you when you lost them?
I was in the 19s. I was 16 years old.
They died at the same time?
No, they died
but they did.
10 years apart, but I was very young in both cases.
We had a section in the magazine called Inspiration, and every issue we had inspiring stories. So I have hundreds of inspiring stories that we've published over the years.
Yeah, I mean, there are many famous stories, but that always stick in your mind. The story about the guy in the hospital bed who would describe the scene out the window to the guy who couldn't see because he didn't have a window near the bed near the window, and he would describe this fabulous scene was going on, and then the guy finally died, and he was able to move into that bed, and he looked out the window and saw the brick wall of the building next to him, because the guy was making it all up just to keep his spirits up. Yes, that's that kind of stuff where people are, selfless and creative in their interactions with others. To me, that's the most powerful stuff.
I have a two-sided question. What's the best advice you've ever received, and also, or what's the worst advice you've ever received?
Well, the best advice was don't quit your day job.
Right. Don't quit your day job.
The worst advice, I think it said, don't work with Heshy. It's not going to work out.
Yeah. It's interesting. I would say people who told me that, you'll be better off if you get out of the music business. I will tell you that the life of a musician is a difficult life. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about a recording musician, even a recording musician, but a working musician. Guy plays in a band at weddings and stuff. Everyone stands around and watches you play. It's a very hard life. You live your life upside down because when you're working, people are sleeping. When you're sleeping, people are working. So it's a very upside down life, very difficult. And I was advised many times to leave the life. It's not good. And eventually I followed that advice, and I went out into the business world and I worked. And I can't say that I terribly regret it, but there are times when I look back and say, I probably would have been happier had I stayed with the music as full time. Because it touches a creative place in you that the best business deal that you do, the most successful business deal you make, doesn't have that same. Now, I will qualify that because people are constructed differently. For some people, yes, making a business deal is the highlight of their life, and I would never say don't do that. And I've made some deals that were very satisfying from a perspective of financial security and so on. But from a creative place, I sometimes look back and say, had I really stayed in the music business, my whole musical experience would have been at a different level.
It's so interesting because, one of the whole goals of living and being alive is to emulate Hashem. So, obviously learning Torah is the blueprint of the world. You want to learn about Hashem and learn about the world. That's really how you do it. But something that I think doesn't get enough credit is the idea that Hashem's a creator. So obviously we create in certain ways. We create children and create ideas and stuff. But actually going and trying to create, let's say what you did, create a show and create concepts and create laughter, that in a way is the ultimate way of emulating Hashem. Yes, I think that's the satisfaction that you're talking about. Of course, it's authentically enjoyable because you're doing what Hashem created the world for,
Exactly.
Yes.
If I come up with a song, I hum it to Heshy. A week later, he sends me back a tape, fully arranged rendition of the song, and I say, "Oh my gosh, that is so rewarding to hear a finished product made out of your." And all of a sudden, you hear the symphonies and the violins and the drums. So I agree with you that the creative process is a divine process.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I mean, I've written songs over the years as well. I mean, many songs, and one song in particular really sticks out in my mind, and because I remember so clearly the process of composing that song, and most of the time I don't, because you write a song, and it's not even a conscious process.
Is that Laman Yerbu you're talking about?
Not Laman Yerbu. Laman Yerbu was way back when. It was Rifa'enu.
Oh.
Shlomo
Simcha sang that.
Yeah, Shlomo Simcha sang it on his album. I had a very, very dear friend who got very ill. And it was a terrible blow to us. He was young. He was a vibrant, such an outsized personality. And he was stricken with this terrible disease. And I remember I sat down at the piano and I said, I want to write a song with the words Rifa'enu Hashem. And if I tell you, I sat down, it was like opening up, and just the song just came out. In one fell swoop, I wrote the entire song. And in the final analysis, I didn't change one note from that first 3 or 4 minute segment of time. And that was, to me, such a clear sign that there's just a divine inspiration aspect to this idea of creating songs and creating music. I would say that was the signature moment of that process for me.
Wow. Well, what happened with your friend?
He ultimately didn't survive. He did survive for many years. He fought like a tiger, but the disease was just too much.
Right. So out of the 613 mitzvahs, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them we don't do anymore.
I'm writing a song listing all the 630. It's a very long song.
It's a long song. It's going to 2 albums.
I don't know if you're joking or serious. No, you never know. There's always
I did the Cedrus. I did the...
We did the 39 Malachas. We did the Cedras. We did the months.
those are a little shorter.
Yeah, 613 mitzvahs. That's an undertaking.
So is there one particular mitzvah that each of you gravitate more than the others?
Well, I think eating shalom on Shabbos.
That's a big one.
I'm very makpid on that.
Very
Right.
big. Huh?
I even start Thursday night. What about you, Hesh?
Yeah, well, it's like I throw in kishka also, like a little side dish. One mitzvah. Wow, pick one mitzvah out of 613.
Well, Kibbut Avayim to me
I
was
was
very,
thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah?
Kibbut Avayim.
very makpid on that.
It's something that I unfortunately didn't get to do a lot of, but I extended to brothers and to my own children. And I'd say that's a big one.
My father was very sick for 12 years, and we spent a lot of time with him, taking care of him. So I would say that.
That's really beautiful. We're towards the end, but I'm curious. Where do each of you live now?
I live here in the 5 towns.
You live in 5 towns, okay.
I'm in a tent in homeless shelter. No, I live in Flatbush.
You live in Flatbush.
Yeah.
Okay. And how often are you two conversing and...
No, continuously. I mean,
Yeah? Like you're
we're
always...
texting, calling, I was just in his house last week, and I'm going again Sunday to work on more stuff. So whenever we have free time, we get together.
It's really, obviously the content that you've each provided and continue to provide is very beautiful, but just the friendship alone that you have is how many people could say for so many years they've worked with their best friend. And
yeah, well, that's a big blessing. I'd say that's one of the biggest blessings in my life, is that I have this relationship that through everything, no matter what happens, I can have one constant that I can always count on. It's special.
That's really nice.
If I wanted to have one guy in the foxhole with me, it would have to be Heshy.
That's really beautiful.
We both don't care about money, because we never had any.
But I'm sure there was times or opportunities where it could have shaken things up a little, but I think you each have your head on straight and have your priorities in order.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Nothing is worth losing the friendship for,
Right.
except that one time.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but now that you mention it.
So I want you to now like plug yourselves as much as possible for people that want to hear the older stuff that you've done or the new things that are coming out. Where could they find you?
Well, they can find us in any Jewish bookstore,
Okay.
any Jewish Judaica store. The CDs are all still there. And they can get us anywhere online. We're on Spotify, we're on Amazon, we're on YouTube,
right.
we're
Naki
on
Radio.
Naki Radio and Jewish Music FM, 24/6. We're on all the platforms that are out there, mostlymusic.com. We're on all these platforms now. We finally took that leap to do that. It's been about a year and a half, I guess, that we've been up there on all the platforms. And we're like I said, we're constantly exploring ideas about how to expand. And like you said, we do have a lot of content, 16 albums, and we're looking at maybe going through the archives that we have of radio shows and maybe putting some of those old radio shows up into a podcast area on some of these platforms.
I would love it. Oh my gosh, that'd be so cool.
Yeah.
Would you ever bring the I don't say radio show, but like you could technically do it again and do
people have tried to get us to do that again.
What's the biggest hesitancy? It's all that work.
It's a lot of work. It also, even from a technical standpoint, being set up to be able to take phone calls and you know, it's.
You don't need to do phone calls. You could do Zooms.
Well,
Like Riverside.fm and then.
All right, we'll have to talk.
Yeah,
about
I'll
that.
talk after that. If I could be of any help to get you guys to do
Okay.
more stuff for sure, that'd be so cool. Okay, so they can find you, and then also you have a website.
We have a website. We don't really do a lot on the website. The website has been. We set it up originally because we were going to expand our presence through that, but that kind of fell down, and it became just an avenue to push the music, the CDs. It's not really. It's not really ongoing in terms of putting new content on there. Although there's something, again, we talked about these things all the time. We talk about a lot of things, but it's really just the two of us. So if he doesn't do it and I don't do it, there isn't anybody who's going to do it. So if you're not busy, Mister.
Well, thank you very much for you is a little easier to come out here, but Country Yossi, thank you for coming up.
Thank you for having us and for considering us inspirational people.
Totally, 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this week's episode. I have a favor to ask of you. Yes, you, the person listening to this or watching this while you clean your dishes. 97% of people that watch or listen to this show clean their dish. Okay, obviously I'm making that up as well. I don't know the stats. I don't know what you're doing when you're listening. Hopefully, whatever you're doing, it's not too distracting, so you could focus on whatever you're doing. Or maybe you're just laying in bed, staring at the ceiling, watch and listen. But here's the favor that I have. Could you please go ahead and share this podcast on your WhatsApp status, maybe in a group that you're on, maybe on your Instagram story? The best chizuk that I get is when I see people share this podcast, because I could see oh my gosh, people are actually enjoying it. They're enjoying it so much that they want to share it with others. And I think a lot of people do share it. And I think a lot of more people would share it if I'm just frank and honest and ask you to share it. The more the merrier. There's so many people out there that listen, but I want quadruple of that and quadruple of that. So go ahead and share Inspiration for the Nation. You could send me email saying that you did, hi@livinglchaim.com, and I'll send you back a fun response in my appreciation. I won't say without further ado, but we already finished the episode. Until next time, keep on being inspirational. Go ahead and check out Joma's podcast. Call their hotline, Lchaim. Living Lchaim.